Director Clapper, how would you describe your confidence in attributing these attacks to the Russian government as opposed to someone in their basement?
It's very high.
Folks, that was James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, appearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee on yesterday, looking into Russian hacking of the 2016 election. It seems the only person who needs convincing is President-elect Donald Trump, who continues to claim it is difficult to determine who actually did the hacking. He keeps saying some 400-pound dude in New Jersey. That is not true, according to Senator Jack Reed.
Russia's best cyber operators are judged to be as elusive and hard to identify as any in the world. In this case, however, detection and attribution were not so difficult, the implication being that Putin may have wanted us to know what he had done, seeking only a level of plausible deniability to support an official rejection of culpability.
Now, yesterday, Trump tweeted this before the hearing, quote, "The media lies to make it look like I am against, quote, intelligence, end quote, when in fact I'm a big fan. Yet you actually keep questioning the intelligence. I'm sorry, Donald Trump, keep trying to pass this off onto the media. No, we just report what you tweet because you refuse to actually have a news conference to answer questions." Trump has been critical of U.S. intelligence since the cyber hacking story broke during the presidential campaign, and House Speaker Paul Ryan said he offered a reason why.
Russia clearly tried to meddle in our political system. No two ways about it. Let me say a couple of things. First of all, and I think this is what the president-elect is legitimately upset about, there are attempts on the left to try and delegitimize this election. That's just bogus. He won fair and square. He won clearly and convincingly.
Okay, but he still is trying to say that they didn't do it. Today in New York, Trump will receive the same intelligence briefing on Russian hacking that President Barack Obama received yesterday, a 50-page report the president requested from the intelligence community last month.
The president has also directed the intelligence community to make as much of the information that's included in the report public, because it's important for the American people to understand that it's our democracy that has been interfered with. And so the people who are participating in that democracy should have as much information as possible about what exactly happened.
And that report is going to be released next week. Joining us via phone from Hudson, New York, is Malcolm Nance, a counterterrorism intelligence advisor. Also via Skype from New York is Terrell Starr, contributing reporter for Foxtrot Alpha. Malcolm, I'll start with you. When you see the report today, Washington Post is reporting that they have intercepts of Russian officials cheering after the election, congratulating themselves on Donald Trump's victory when it comes to Moscow. Donald Trump, to this day, still refuses to say a negative word about Vladimir Putin. You actually tweeted something where you said this is clear evidence of essentially Donald Trump being flipped.
Well, yeah, that's true. You might also note that I wrote a book called The Plot to Hack America, which came out about 3 months ago, a month before the election, that outlined everything the CIA reported to the president, only at an unclassified basis. So I came to that assessment back in September that Donald Trump was the recipient of Russian intelligence's largesse by essentially conducting exactly Watergate, by breaking into the DNC, stealing everything they could, and then releasing it to support the election of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's rejecting this is no surprise. He rejects everything that doesn't benefit him, and then he attacks everyone that has any criticism of him. Today ought to be very interesting because he's going to get the report presented to him at the top secret classified, code word level, and it will be very interesting to see whether he accepts any of it or he just rejects it out of hand. I'm voting for rejects it out of hand.
And to that point, I mean, what then will it look like if Donald Trump then rejects this report after hearing from the top officials? They're going to be sharing the most sensitive information. They will be sharing intercepts. They'll be actually sharing how they actually tracked Russia. Julian Assange has said he did not receive the information with WikiLeaks directly from Russia, but our intelligence officials say that they use middlemen. He is going to actually hear exactly how it was done. he will have no choice but to finally say, all right, hands up, okay, enough. You're telling this, folks, I believe you now.
Well, that's not necessarily true. The intelligence community, we collect intelligence and then we produce products. And in this case, the product is a body of evidence. That evidence is based on what we call intelligence facts, right? Ground facts, sources and methods, showing pathways leading directly from one point to another. Donald Trump can still just reject that out of hand. You know, I mean, this is a guy whose information comes essentially from people who whisper in his ear, public sources, even InfoWars, Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist. In his mind, he believes that has greater credibility. We could spell out everything for him, and if he decides that at a political level he will not accept that, then that's just the way it's going to be. He has to make the decision on how it will be consumed. Now, one last point I'd like to make. In the intelligence community, and I have a lot of friends who are in the intelligence community, both active and retired and in media, you know, this has gone from silly to serious, from serious to suspicious. And if Donald Trump rejects this today, it will go from suspicious to sinister.
Terrell,
and that means that... Go ahead.
Terrell, I want to bring you in. You just came back from, was it Ukraine?
Ukraine, yes, yesterday.
And you talked to a number of officials there. What are they say? How are they looking at this sort of this constant bromance between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and his refusal to say a single critical word about Putin, and then to attack U.S. intelligence as opposed to support Americans when it comes to Russian hacking?
I spoke to between 4 and 5 government officials. I spoke, including a soldier who fought in eastern Ukraine and who was wounded fighting the Russians. And the level of people I spoke to was a member of parliament, a deputy minister, and other kind of bureaucratic officials who have access to certain intelligence and to particularly with the conflict in eastern Ukraine. They're very concerned. And in fact, what I kept hearing from these officials was that they were really incredibly shocked that the American public is actually tolerating this kind of behavior, particularly from the intelligence community, when it's perfectly clear. And they keep telling me, well, Putin is making it perfectly clear that he intervened, yet you have a person who was elected by the American people who is denying this, and there seems to be this kind of acceptance of it. That's the shocking thing. But going more into what the consequences would be, they're particularly concerned that the sanctions against Russia over Putin's invasion of Ukraine will be dropped. One deputy minister I spoke to directly told me that if the sanctions are dropped, it will make it more difficult for him to work within his ministry to resolve the conflict there, and it will only embolden Putin to even dig deeper into Eastern Europe.
When you, Terrell, when you look at this, when you look at, again, where this stands, doesn't this also, and so I want you to comment, then I'm going to go to Malcolm as well. Trump refused to release his taxes. He has refused to release an itemized list of the debt of his company. When you talk about suspicion, you have people who are saying that this is the reason why he keeps siding with Putin, because the Russians, because when he owes millions and millions, perhaps billions in debt, he is essentially repaying Russia for bailing him out financially. Your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, the conversations that I've had with Ukrainians over the past week or so has been, he must owe Putin money. Of course, we don't have evidence of this, so I'm not saying, so I'm not making this statement just blindly, but the conversations in Ukraine are come to this conclusion. And they mentioned something else that was important. There was a former president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. One of my Ukrainian colleagues said that essentially Donald Trump is America's Viktor Yanukovych, and so he was extremely corrupt. He stole hundreds of millions of dollars from the Ukrainian government, and he refused to disclose the full sources of his income. And so they were essentially telling me that they're pretty much used to people like Donald Trump, and America is getting their dose of what it feels to be ruled by someone who's considered to be a tyrant.
Malcolm, by not getting the personal finances of Donald Trump, you mentioned suspicion. That drives it because if you look at all of his tweets, he hasn't said a single word remotely critical of Russia or Putin. And so when you look at that, a reasonable person has to conclude here's somebody who has something of value, and he is in essence having to repay them for their largesse over the years.
Right. That's quite possible. And until we receive documentary evidence of that, it's just going to remain speculation. But that speculation being out there, Ambassador Mike McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, he put it this way. He said the denials are so vehement, and he is so adamant not to insult Russia in any way, to compliment them and every person who helped elect him, including Julian Assange, that it's starting to go from suspicion to belief of cover-up. And, I had another officer, a CIA officer, who I know, Nada Bakos, who said in her Twitter feed, any person speaking even remotely close to the way Donald Trump does, who has a top-secret security clearance, would have already been hauled in for a counterintelligence investigation to determine whether that person had been a turned agent of a foreign intelligence agency. And also, that being said, this is where we are with our president-elect.
And also keep it.
Know if he's in debt to Russia.
And also keep it.
Foreign agent.
And keep in mind that former CIA Director James Woosley, who was an advisor to the Trump transition team, resigned yesterday over all of this mess as well. Malcolm Nance, folks, pull up his book, please. He is the author of the book, The Plot to Hack America, How Putin's Cyber Spies and WikiLeaks Tried to Steal the 2016 Election. Also, Terrell Starr. We appreciate it, gentlemen. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at that, black Russian experts on TV. Let's go to our panel. Dr. Avis Jones-Dweaver, leadership strategist, author of How Exceptional Black Women Lead. Folks, please, when Avis is on, be sure to put a book cover up. You got to do that. Yolanda Young, columnist and attorney at Lawyers of Color. Sue Zodak, founding CEO of the Zodak Agency. Sue, I'll start with you, being a Republican. What the hell?
Well, we have to remember that what we're talking about is hacking the DNC and revealing that Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the other people at the DNC wanted to push down Bernie Sanders.
Actually, it's not true. That's not true. The report, what Clapper said yesterday, that what this was widespread hacking of the White House, the Department of Defense, Joint Chiefs of Staff. No. Clapper yesterday laid out this was an extensive operation by Russia that went beyond the DNC, that went to other levers of power of the federal government. That's not true.
But none of that, what we're misleading the public by saying that this rigged the election. It wasn't about rigging the ballot boxes. It wasn't about any of that.
Sue, if you're going to come on this show, you have to speak factually. You did not hear Malcolm, Terrell, or me say the word rigging. What we said was influence. What did James Clapper say yesterday, the Director of National Intelligence? He said influence. So what they have concluded is that Russia was trying to influence the 2016 election. Not rigged, influence.
Well, no, I agree that you guys are speaking of it in general. I'm talking about...
No, I'm not speaking of it in general. I'm being very specific. But what I'm saying is, don't say we said, oh, this was a rigged election. No. And Clapper was not just talking about the Democrats. What he said, it was very clear that Russia tried to impact the levers of power. This is why Senator John McCain also said that, in essence, Russia's moves were an act of war.
No, Look, I agree with Senator McCain. I think that this is a problem. I don't think that it leads to people to believe that Donald Trump wouldn't have been elected president, though. I think those are two different things.
I'll ask you directly then. Do you believe that Russia was trying to impact the 2016 election with their hacks?
Yes.
That's what this discussion is all about. Yolanda Davis.
Listen. We could have predicted that Donald Trump would once again align himself with an alleged rapist. But what is really
When you say that, you mean Julian Assange?
Yes. What is really powerful, though, is that the U.S. intelligence community is now finally coming to terms and dealing with the fact that they have a long and storied history of lying to the American people, deceiving the American people, being complicit in deceptions of the American people, and that is what is giving Trump and those who deal in fake news, that is what is giving them enough credibility to be able to influence the American community.
Avis, by us not being able to fully see the taxes of Donald Trump, to see who his debtors are, who he owed money to, this is why the suspicion is there. And he was so adamant about not releasing the information, even though he promised it. And other reporting has been shown that it was the money of multiple millions into the billions of Russian, Russian oligarchs who really bailed his company out after he basically blew it up in the 80s with Trump Taj Mahal.
Exactly. I mean, it is so clear to me. I mean, here we have someone who has failed to release any sort of financial information that would let us know what his financial dealings may or may not be with Russia. If he's clean, why not release it, right? And then secondly, he's someone who habitually lies. Let's just be very real about this. He also said recently that on Wednesday or Thursday, he would be releasing what he knows that apparently nobody else knows, that suggests that Russia was not involved. And of course,
he said on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yes, nothing happened.
It's Friday, and we haven't heard anything, Sue.
Well, I think, if there's nothing in it, you should release it. Applies to a lot of things that, have happened in the past, including emails and
No. He said, I know, no, Sue, So he said, I know stuff about this that you don't know that I'll release on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's Friday.
No, look,
it hasn't been released.
Look,
he never had it.
Donald Trump is a PR nightmare. I mean, I think we can all agree that he says things that don't have a basis in fact.
I didn't say PR. It's a national security nightmare.
Well,
Absolutely.
We'll
if the president-elect of the United States cannot trust American intelligence, and he actually will trust Julian Assange over American intelligence as a president-elect, is that not a problem for Republicans and for Democrats and for America?
I think that we need to see what happens today after he gets the full hearing and what his statements are.
I don't expect anything to happen differently. I mean, here is someone who has a history of seeking revenge against people. I'm concerned about what he will do when he's in office in terms of potentially restructuring the intelligence agencies. That's something that he's already alluded to.
All right.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.